Hey everyone, if it's Friday at noon, it's time for radical collaboration. Hi, my name is Tom Schwab, and my word for 2020 was radical collaboration. I know it's 2 words, but hey, when you turn 50, you get extra words. And what caused me to do this is that people would come to me and they'd say, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do this? How do you do this?" And to me, it was always like asking your dentist, "Can you do my knee surgery?" Now, I love my dentist. She is awesome. She's smart. She's hardworking. I'm sure she could figure this out, but she would serve me best by introducing me to someone else. So when people come to me and say, "Hey, how do you get a book on Audible? You say it's really important for podcast guests. Can you help me with that?" I'm like, I probably could, but you want an expert. You want somebody that knows how to do it, does it day in, day out. Let me introduce you to my friend, David Wolf. And let's pull him up here. David, I'm thrilled to have you here.
It's Friday somewhere. Tom, great to be with you. Thank you. And it occurred to me as you were saying that it's 2 words, if you hyphenate them, maybe that solves the problem. I'm not sure, but it's up to you.
With my spelling, it's probably 1 word still, right?
And as a musician, I can attest to spelling and, the challenges that we have. So, great to be with you.
And I remember how we first met through David Hancock from Morgan James introduced us. And I know you do the vast majority of the books for Morgan James and other authors. And once again, what was ordinary to you is amazing to me because, podcasts and audible learning are so powerful. And I would say the same thing about Audible books. Can you talk a little bit about that market and what you're seeing in the Audible market?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. And thanks for that. So we have seen an upsurge in the interest in audio. We talk to a lot of authors and I often hear them say, my tribe, my fan base is asking for audio because they have either perceived scarcity of time or they just prefer to listen than sit and read. It's just a phenomenon of I think technology in general. So what we used to call books on tape has been growing. They say it's outstripping the ebook market right now, which is fascinating. So my guess is that people, if they're going to read words, in many cases, they prefer a physical book or they'll choose audio. So we're seeing an upsurge in activity, great for our business, but for the authors and for many of our authors, as you know, they are the voice of their own brand. So it makes sense for them to be connecting directly with their audience. And I know we'll talk about that more in this segment, but the market has been growing around 28, 29% year over year for the past several years. And all the data is pointing to it continues to grow. I think it's about a $3 billion market worldwide now.
Well, I think what I buy on Audible is adding to that $3 billion because for me it's just so easy to click on a book and to buy it. And often I feel like I'm lying when I tell people I read 1 to 2 books a week. Well, it's the rare book that I will actually take the physical book and read it. Most of the time I'm just consuming them on Audible. And for me, it's easier. And that's why I love podcasts too.
Yeah, it's similar.
One of the things that I've seen is that I'll listen to it quickly on Audible. And if I really like the book, then I'm going back and buying the hardcover or the paperback. So, I can study it, highlight it. So I think in some ways, people say, well, it's going to erode my sales. I don't know. If they wouldn't have read it anyway, it might actually increase your sales.
There is a cross-pollination factor. Absolutely. Some people, they may want to look at it while they're listening. I mean, there are a lot of ways to consume content. So I think there's a case to be made that one may promote the other and it works both directions. When we publish, of course, it hits the Amazon page and there's the different versions. You've got ebook, you've got hardcover, you've got soft, and then you've got audio, and they're all living together. So the consumer has a choice. And you called it Audible. I should clarify that the ecosystem of where we distribute is sort of broad. There are about 35 or more outlets, retail outlets that we can distribute to, and we do. The big 3 are Audible, Amazon, iTunes, through a portal or a platform called ACX, which really is kind of the industry standard. They're the big guys in the market. But out the long tail, you have many other alternative and smaller, call them maybe nichier distribution models with their own, or distribution retailers with their own apps in many cases. And it's a similar delivery system, but they're just branded differently and they have different ways. Some are subscription based and some are they're a la carte, where you buy a book at a time like you might on Amazon if you're not a Prime member. So there are a lot of options. Typically, we're going out to the big three, and then we'll ask, do you want to be on all the 30 more? Because we can do that. And there are some details around exclusive on ACX, Audible, Amazon, iTunes, and not exclusive, and whether, what kind of freedom do you have to sell your book elsewhere. And those are the kinds of things I have in an initial discussion when I talk to an author that's interested in doing all of this.
That's once again why I bring on experts here, because I use Audible like Kleenex, right? To me, it's just a generic word. And, I'll say, I want to be on Audible, and you'll come back and go, do you want to be on all the rest of them? Well, that's what I said, isn't it? No, it's not what you said. So I love that. And hey, we got a couple friends listening now. We got Jeff Brown from Read to Lead podcast.
Hey, Jeff.
I guess with that, we can call it Listen to Lead in my point there. Neil Howe, Sean Gillespie, and Mark Coster. So
hey, good to see you guys.
Thanks everybody here. One of the things, David, that always worried me was when somebody would say, are you going to do your book on Audible? I had this vision of, I got to go to Chicago. I've got to go to a recording studio, or I've got to hire a voiceover talent to do it for me. And it just seemed so daunting. It's like, it was hard enough writing the book. Yeah. Now I've got to record it.
Yep.
And I know you cured me of some of those myths, right? So what does it really look like to record a book? And do you have to have voiceover talent?
All right. So the first question I'll ask an author, and generally there's a dividing line. If it's fiction, more than likely we're going to go out. We have a casting team. We'll go out to market and we'll find the voiceover talent that's perfect for the characters, the narrative, the nuances, the story arc, any dialects that are required. We'll find a narrator or more than one narrator to do the performance of a fiction. But most of our work does tend to be nonfiction. We're working with business leaders, thought leaders, and so forth, consultants, speakers, coaches. So what I like to, the first question is, do you think you want to be the voice of the book? Do you want to narrate your own? And so once we establish that, and by the way, I'm an advocate of that if you can make the economics work, because you're the voice of your brand. You're the connectivity to market. So it makes sense from a standpoint of branding, delivery, performance for you to do it. It's also a fabulous experience reading your own work and reconnecting with it as you orate in a recording. So the process can be very beneficial for you as an author. So once we establish that, we've created a whole model, and I should contextualize this a little bit, Tom. Originally, I was a music composer and producer for radio, TV, and film. So we've built big studios and we've had fancy this and that over many years. I've stopped, kind of get out of that business when I was around 40 and moved into the spoken word and became more of a business guy around the audio business. So I have an appreciation for big, expensive studios, but technology, the internet, our ability to be mobile, hypermobile, all of those things really enabled us to now do what I like to call high quality or HD audio, if you will, remotely. So not using Zoom or Skype, but another system that we love called Squadcast. We use this for our podcast production side, because we're also a podcast production company. And then we also, for the audiobooks, we record authors remotely all over the world from the comfort of their home or home office. So we've gotten really good at this. I mean, as you think into this, no commute, flexible scheduling. We do our process in 90 minutes at a time. We find that that's a good arc. We keep them hydrated. When we first get set up, we situate the microphone. We make sure you've got the equipment you need, which is minimal, under $200 for a basic setup that's USB plug and play. Earbuds plug into the mic so you can hear yourself, what we call live cue. You want to hear what you sound like on the mic as you're performing. We have a producer live with you in the virtual room, the studio, so that as you're recording, there's retakes, outtakes, all a part of production. This is normal. Professional voiceovers. There's no expectation that you read from top to bottom flawlessly. That's our job, to make it look or sound seamless, if you will. So that's the process. 90-minute sessions. Word count drives it all. It drives the economics. It drives what the estimated running time of the book will be, how many sessions we'll need. And once we have all the remote audio recorded, then we go to work. I have a team of about a dozen freelancers that are certified by us, and they do the editing and post-production to get it ready and in compliance for distribution on these online retailers, this ACX3, Amazon, Audible, iTunes, and then all of the others. So there are some technical things that are required of audiobook delivery or from the retailers, things like noise floor, peak levels, RMS, which is a way of measuring average volume, no extraneous noises in the room. In order for recording at home, if you will, to work well, we have to make sure we have softness around you. And what I mean by that is you don't have to have expensive panels like I have here, but we've had cases where we put pillows or a blanket in front of the mic. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be situated. So you've got bookshelves around you, softness, maybe carpet on the floor. We like using a boom stand as opposed to a desk stand now. We've really moved into that space to avoid the noises you might make as you're scrolling, as you read, mouse noise and things like that we've gotten really good at sort of clearing out of the way so that we have a good, clean recording to edit in post-production.
That's so awesome. And you touched on a bunch of things there. One of them is, if it's fiction and there's multiple characters, having people to read those. But I often encourage people that are with us on a podcast book tour to read their own book. Yep. Tim Sanders, who we worked with early on for Deal Storming and Love is the Killer app, he pointed out to us that if your goal is to speak from stage, to build your personal brand, well, people are going to want to hear what your voice sounds like. Yep. And I think it's a great way for people to try before they buy, right? There are a lot of great authors out there that you would not want to have them on stage, right? Because they're great authors, but they may not be great communicators or have the great voice. So listening to it is almost that try before you buy. And I think of, Malcolm Gladwell. Is he a great voiceover star? I don't know if he's the best voiceover talent, but I can't imagine anyone else reading his books. And if I went to see him on a keynote and it didn't sound like the same gentleman that was doing the books that I had gotten so used to, it would be so much different there. So while your voice might not be perfect, it's yours.
No, I like this. Not perfect. It's yours. You are the voice, what I now call the voice brand, short for voice of the brand. You are the voice of your brand. And so you're the connectivity to market. You're warming people up to how you think, how you express yourself, and it translates to the experience they have of you as a speaker, thought leader, so forth. Everything you said is absolutely true. And people will say, well, I have an accent. Well, yeah, that's your accent. I don't have a great voice. I'm not really a professional. It's fine. It's yours. And you just said that. I'm really reiterating. I really try to reinforce that idea for any thought, we'll call it a wisdom leader or a thought leader type of an author.
Now, you mentioned podcast production and audiobook production.
Yes.
I know you do both. And a lot of times the equipment is similar, right? The
Yes.
microphones can be similar.
Sure.
I love Squadcast. That's an awesome platform. But in what ways are they different between, say, a podcast production and a audiobook production?
That's a great question. So the formatic piece of this is somewhat intuitively obvious. Many podcasts are less formal. You're not reading a script, strictly reading a script and performing a script. So I would say that the format, you have a lot more flexibility in a podcast environment. You can have a pull quote before the music kicks in. You can have no music. You can do solo. You can do multiple people in a conversation and make that a podcast. You can... So the format is much more flexible typically in a podcast environment. The other thing is the production side. There aren't hard and fast audio requirements. I mean, there are certain sort of broadcast standards that you want to meet in terms of levels and you not having distortion and, all the things you would expect out of quality audio like we're doing now. But the ACX environment does have restrictions. I can't recall if I mentioned some of these, but the beginnings of each file is its own little section of the book. So the opening and closing credits, about the author, the chapters, all of those things, the forward, they are all separate files as delivered, and that's required. Each file has to have a certain amount of what we call room tone or silence before and after, and it's very specific. So for authors who come to us, in fact, I just had an author who recorded her own and wanted to make sure it was in compliance. So that's an example of a abbreviated operation. She did her own recording, but we did, we're a boutique, so we customize our packages. I said, look, we'll do a review of your audio to make sure it's in compliance, because you don't want to submit it and then have the clock start and then you're waiting until it goes live and then, oh, they kicked it back because the room tone was too long on the front, or your peak levels were too low, -8 instead of -3 decibels dB. So those are the kinds of things my team is conditioned to do. It's really pure audio engineering. And for those that don't know how to do it, so in terms of contrasting podcasts to audiobooks, the requirements are more stringent on the audiobook delivery side.
The author that you're talking about, I know which one. We won't mention names here, but an amazing book. And she had sent it to me in all of the different files just through Dropbox.
Yep.
And the content was great. But as I was listening to it last weekend, I was also mowing the lawn. So every time that file would end, another chapter would end, I'd have to stop. I'd have to go open up my phone again and go on to that next file.
Well,
I'm like, there's those little things, there's a lot of things in this world that are easy to do, but hard to do well.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would have gone through that had I not known what the quality of the content was going to be.
Correct.
So I think you put it together and take something from the good level to the amazing customer experience.
And you're talking about thank you, Tom. And but what you're talking about the method of delivery. That was a case where maybe you use a cloud-based collaborative tool like a Dropbox environment where it's not really designed to index the audio files and sequence them like a playlist would. So those sorts of nuances, you have to have the right software in place to do that. So those are some of the challenges she was expressing, and we're going to fix them. So it's a great case of they did their own recording, and now we're going to finish it up and get it into distribution.
Mm-hmm. So is there a right time, in your opinion, to launch the audiobook? So if should it come out with the book? Should you come out after the book? Is it too late to release it in audiobook? I'm sure you got an opinion on your, your smile.
My smile is really suggesting multiple opinions, which suggests that I have multiple personalities. Not exactly, but there are different schools of thought, and I could probably argue any of them. But this may be productive to just get it out there, right? So more and more when I'm talking to authors, they really have a desire to give the consumer the choice right away, almost as simultaneous as release. I think that's where the industry is trending, because we're entering a world where it's not like an afterthought. Oh, I'll put it on audio too. We're in a world where content is content, and it comes at us in many different forms: video, audio, print, blog, whatever. There's even a convergence of the publishing industry with what I'll call iterative or episodic release. So it's getting to the point where there's a ubiquitous approach to disseminating content, and I think this is a case where that's true. That said, there is an argument for, what if I wait 3 months or 6 months down the road, because now I get to relaunch. But I think that the industry is moving more towards simultaneous. From what I've observed, we do about 100 titles a year, a mixture of different things, some fiction, mostly nonfiction. And I think the desire is because when people find out that an author's writing a book, they're getting asked, hey, do you have it in audio right away? It isn't like, okay, my book came out. Now there's this surge of interest. 6 months later, is someone going to say, well, I didn't buy the print version or the ebook version, but I'll do the audio now. I think that's less the case now. This is my own. If I had an opinion, it would be that it's simultaneous in the front end. Not always possible for the economics, for whatever the reason happens to be.
And I would say that my opinion has been impacted by what we've gone through recently, right? Because I saw a lot of authors that launched their book in February, and I can think of one, and I ordered his book, Amazon Prime, and all of a sudden it was supposed to get to me, instead of 1 to 2 days, the delivery date was like, I don't know, 2 months. How do you launch a book when the biggest source of books isn't shipping them? Whereas at least if there was the Audible version, if there was the electronic version, it would have, that's that unforeseen. The other thing too is, there's a lot of problems in the world today, but I really believe there's no greater time to be alive, right? So we can create in the way that's easiest for us and then repurpose the way that's easiest for the people consuming it, right? So to me, it's like, it shouldn't be an either or, it should be an and,
Yes,
however,
either and. I use that all the time.
Either and however people want to read the book, let them do it that way.
Give the consumer a choice. It's the have it your way moment, Now I love that framework too. Just the idea that, we're dealing with content that is non-physical now and more, we're going through a time where the physicality can be cumbersome or restricted. And so the ability to consume or access content in any form, it's sort of an inflection point around the businesses, certainly the business we're in. I know it's affected your business as well, with a surge of interest. And from my side, I'm dealing with both the fact that authors don't want to leave their house to go to a studio. So they're now discovering it could have been done remotely all the way. It's like an Oz moment, right? You always had Dorothy, you always had the power to do it at home. You just didn't know. But the technology has also enabled this. We've been at it for about 3 years now, doing this remote stuff. And I'll be honest, it's just a little disclosure. Even before we had great platforms like this one or Squadcast to do high quality audio remotely, where it produces a local end-to-end recording on the client side computer. That's the way this works. It's not recording through the internet. Even before we had that, I actually got away, I'll say it, with doing some books on Skype. We made it work. It wasn't pretty and we got through it, and we got it through compliance, but it was, it was a little bit of a task. Now the audio quality coming off of our recordings on these remote sessions it's so great that, it's no longer an issue.
And what an amazing day we live in, right? So we both grew up in the Chicagoland area, right? Yep. But here I am in southwestern Michigan, and you're down in New Mexico. So work all of a sudden becomes what you do, not where you go. I remember talking with David Hancock and saying, 10 years ago, I would have had to have a business in, New York, Chicago, LA, London. And now it's almost a thing of pride. I can say, I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan, actually a suburb of Kalamazoo, Michigan. So if I can do it from here, you can do it any place. In the same way, you're in New Mexico. If you can record audiobooks in New Mexico, I don't care where you are, you can help somebody do that as long as they've got an internet connection.
That's all that we need now. It's so amazing. Yeah, it's totally amazing. We could go on forever. It's just, it's a miraculous time.
Yeah. And in some ways, I think there's a benefit to it, right? I can't tell you the number of people I've done a podcast interview with, and they're based out of New York, and you can always hear the ambulances going by, and it's like
becomes another character in the podcast. I know
exactly. If I go into the closet, I'm going to just die of heat exhaustion there. So it adds to the ambiance.
Yes, exactly. And to that, exactly. And we've had cases where the window it's closed, but it sounds like it's open because there's traffic. When we do starts and stops and stuff when we're actually in these sessions, it happens. But quieter is better. A little more, 5-6 acres around you doesn't hurt.
Well, if somebody, is thinking about, I've got a book, I should get it out on Audible. And I'll raise my hand here. I'm the biggest offender. I'm the one that always tells them, you got to talk to David and get your book on Audible. And they're like, well, why isn't yours on Audible? I'm like, because I'm updating it, and I'm going to update it for 2020. Then I'm going to do it.
All right.
I believe my wife is listening to this live stream, and she had the joke that if babies were as overdue as my book, the world would be in a hell of a problem. So
love that.
So my question to you for myself is, when should you do the Audible book? Like, how long is it going to take to go from that first call, David, I want to do it, to actually getting it up there?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There's some variables there. Some of the folks we work with, they want to schedule the back-to-back 90-minute sessions right away, and we get them done quick. And we're already editing. Every session we do, we lay it up to the cloud. Our engineer pulls it down, and they're already starting to edit as we're doing the recording. So it's almost like a parallel process. I like to say, the word count drives a lot of this. The running time of the audio drives this. The complexity of the project. We've had a couple of projects come up where we had alternating different people reading different sections, multiple narrators in separate recording sessions, and then we have to post. In post, we assemble it. So all of those things can add time in post-production, and all of these factors, how concisely you schedule your recording, the source recordings, and then how complex the project is, and the word count or the length or the estimating running time, all affected. Typically, we see 4 to 8 weeks for the average. Yeah, the average books in the nonfiction tend to run somewhere between, call it 30,000 to 50, 60,000 words. So if you divide by 9,000 or so, you get an estimated running time, and then you can kind of figure it out. The recording takes probably 1.3 times the actual running length, depending on the quality of the narrator. So some start and stop more. And this is what we do with people. There's no judgment, but it'll take longer if you're doing a lot of stops and starts. We've had a couple of authors where they didn't hit their stride until they were into chapter 2. So we re-recorded the beginning, chapter 1. No problem. We work on a project basis, so it doesn't affect the economics, but it can affect the question you're asking, which is about time. I like to say 5 to 8 weeks is the average, production cycle. But it depends on those couple of factors I mentioned. So I hope that's helpful. Right now, and I should mention, the distribution has been a bit of a bottleneck. So we get it done, and then we submit it to, depending on if you're with a publisher, you're not with a publisher, you're self-published, we help set up, part of our package is we set up the distribution so you don't have to worry about it. You make a couple of choices about, is it exclusive, non-exclusive, this, that, are you going to be on the 30 others we mentioned earlier, or are you just going to be on the 3 big ones, Amazon, Audible, and iTunes? So those questions are answered. Then we help you set up your own account if it's applicable to you, you're self-published. And then we handle and manage all the file management. That doesn't take long, but it does. Used to be about a 14 business day cycle from the time we submitted the book till the time it goes live. Right now, it's been running 30 plus days, business days, and sometimes 45 to 60. Part of it's COVID, and part of it is some other, I think, internal issues that were going on in the ACX environment and Audible. So, there's the answer around time. It's a variable, and when we get together with an author and talk about it, we can get a little bit more precise about what the estimated amount of time it'll be.
Awesome. And I was just looking at here, mutual friend of ours, Ed Epley, is listening here, and what an amazing time.
I love it.
We got Doug Morneau and Stacy Harris, great person working with the veteran community. I've known her for about 37 years. Wow. Her and her husband and I graduated from the Naval Academy 33 years ago on Wednesday. So that caused me to feel really old. But, they say the more gray hair you have, the more you can charge. So that's why I grew a beard, not just to look like the amazing David Wolf.
Well, and if you talk about hair, I mean, you're kind of crossing a line there, Tom, but maybe we can vary that in some cases, absence of hair. Of course, this is by choice, but it is gray. If it ever does grow in, it would be gray. As you can see, is evidenced from the below the timberline thing. I digress.
Well, David, I wanted to thank you so much for your time today. And if this resonated with anybody, if they're like, yes, I've been putting this off way, way, way too long, I need to get the Audible book out there. People have been asking about it. I now have the answer. How can they get in touch with you? 2 basic ways. The website, Audivita.com. It's spelled like the car Audi and then Vita, V-I-T-A, the sound of life. Audivita.com, or just send me an email, dwolf, W-O-L-F, like the aminal, at audivita.com. And I'll put that in the chat down there with the links and everything like that. So I highly recommend. David does great work. Had great feedback from everybody I've sent him his way. And I was going to say, I'm going to be one of those people that has to get the book done. So look for that here in about 8 weeks from me, so I can get the book done. I'm looking forward to that. All right. Thanks, David.